click Add New, you can click Add New on the left-hand side or that button at the top. And we're going to need a title for a post and some body content. So first we'll put in a post. And then I'm just going to quickly generate some content just for filler. So if you're comfortable or you have used something like Microsoft Word or another document editor in the past, then a lot of these options are going to seem very familiar to you. So this bar at the top is our formatting bar, and this toolbar toggle, if you click on that, you get some more options down here. One of the things that you want to be careful of if you're copy and pasting either from some of the Word editors or from other websites, it's going to bring in the styling from that website. So if we look at, there's a visual tab here which shows us how the content is going to look on the front end. And there's also a text tab. And the text tab is going to show us the actual HTML. So I copied something over from a site that doesn't have any specific styling. But if it did, it would show that styling within these tags. And that's where this clear formatting button, that's what that means. So if you highlight text and you do clear formatting, it removes any styles that you might have picked up or removes any styles that you might have added, depending. But in general, all this stuff is fairly straightforward. If you highlight text in the editor and you want to bold it, you click the bold button, italics. If you want to create a list, you create our button list, your first item, hit enter, second item, etc. It's all fairly straightforward. Creating links, if you're just highlighting text, click on the link button, type in the URL, and that's now gonna link to Google. And it's that simple. So when we get into the front end and we get into content, we're gonna be using page builders and all this kind of cool stuff to make your website, your pages and posts look awesome. But when you're talking about text, you're always going to see some variation of this editor. So it's a good idea just to kind of get used to it and just, to know what the different options mean. You can hover over them to get a description, and that's it. The content editing in WordPress is fantastic. You're not going to have any problems there. The last thing to show you before we move on to this is the Add Media button. And this is how you insert pictures into your website. Now, after you've uploaded images, they're always going to be available in this tab, this media library. If you don't have images yet, you can go to the upload files and you can either click this and select files from your computer, or you can drag and drop them onto the screen, which I will do very quickly. So we have a family here, so we want to insert that into our post, and there we go, we have our picture. And now you can see in our media library, it's there. If we click on this, we can see some information. So this is the URL of the image itself. This is the title. You can put in some titles and captions and alt text and descriptions. This is usually good for SEO stuff. So, we want to be using pictures that are relevant to our content. We want to be using pictures that have a purpose. We don't want to just throw images on the website to have images. They should all be aligned with the content or have a specific purpose, in which case it's worth putting in the effort to go through and put in the information about the image. The alignment, left, center, right, or none. The link to can either link, if it's the media file, it's going to just load up the image in general. So it'll load up the original image. The attachment page is the page that WordPress creates to handle the image, to view the image. So essentially just view this image on a page, or a custom URL. So if you wanted people to click on it and go to Google, then you'd click that and you'd put in the URL. And the size is how big do you want the image to be. There's a couple of preset formats in WordPress, which we can also change later. Thumbnail, medium, and just the full size of the image. And that's it. I'm just gonna say for now, while we're going through this and while you're creating your initial pages and your page structure, do not worry about putting in your content. And if you have your content all prepared, then that's fantastic. Drop it in if you want to, but just keep in mind that all the content you put in now is just going to be placeholders, because later on when we get into front end design, we're going to be taking some time to style things, and I'll show you different ways to create page layouts and stuff like that. And so all your content is going to be in a different format later on as you start to get the the creative process going and start entering that in. So don't worry, don't get caught up with how the website looks for now, and don't get caught up with trying to put all your content in the perfect places now, because everything is going to change. I would even say, when we're creating pages in a moment, don't even put content in, or just put a paragraph of the lorem ipsum, which is just kind of a filler. And don't get caught up on it now, because it'll just distract you. And for right now, we just want to worry about getting our site set up and our initial structure, going. So this is our first post. We have a title now. We have some content. Up here, you can see I named it My First Blog Entry. So my slug is automatically generated. And on the right-hand side, just really quickly, there's also this distraction-free writing mode. So if you are writing content later on, you can kind of zoom in, and it removes everything else kind of out of your way so you can focus. On the right-hand side, the first box is the publish, which we'll get to in a second. The second is format. Now, a lot of the things that we're going to talk about are based on the theme that you're using, or in LattePress case, the theme or the plugin that you're using to create your pages. And the thing is that when theme developers create their theme, they create post formats, which are, whether if your post is a normal blog post, or it might be a post that's the featured item is an image or a video or a link or a photo gallery. And what they'll do when they're creating the themes, they'll create predefined layouts depending on what the main focus of the content is. This also goes towards where menus are located, or where the front end widgets are located. So those blocks on our front end. So if we look at our blog entry, these recent posts, recent comments, archives, those are all widgets. And where those widgets can go are determined by the theme creator. And these post formats, whether or not they have those templates, layouts available, also depending on whether or not they put the work in to do it. But again, we're going to be using front-end page builders and stuff like that. So largely, you're going to be able to ignore this. But in the future, if you're using a theme that is not the ones that we cover in our tutorials, you may want to pay attention to this and see which post layouts they have available for you. So for now, we can ignore that. You can collapse that. Categories is you're going to hear taxonomy a lot. And taxonomy is essentially categories are a way to differentiate between content. And there's two different types of taxonomy that are in WordPress. The first is a word that I have trouble pronouncing, which is article. I think that you know what I'm trying to say. And it's kind of a category structure, and you can have main categories and subcategories. And then the other type is tags. And tags are more similar to like the Facebook and Twitter, the hashtags, things like that. They're kind of keywords that define content, that are kind of applied to content rather than content belonging to it. And so to give you a good example of how these should be used, a lot of people make the mistake when they start doing a blog, they think, well, I'll have 50 categories, and whenever I create a blog post, it'll be in like 10 of them. But this is actually a mistake. We want to try to avoid that. When you're creating categories, you want to create categories that are going to cover a substantial amount of your content. And each time we write a blog post, we want it to be in one category, or one category and then a subcategory that belongs to that. So to give you a good example of what we should put as categories and what we should put as tags, I read a great example on another tutorial system called WP101, and they had a video and had a great explanation for this. I believe it was with WP101, and it's about a food website. So if our example is a food website, our categories would be, let's say, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So to create a new category, we just click add new category, and we just type it in. And if you make a typo or a spelling mistake, like I do a lot, you can edit this later. I'll show you how. So let's just put in breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then if we wanted to create a subcategory, I don't really have a good example for this, but let's say that we want to do brunch. We'll do brunch as a subcategory of lunch. It's a little bit silly, but you get the idea. But if you were doing, like, let's say a television show website, you could have, HBO shows as a main category, and then like Game of Thrones as a subcategory, or Rome, or any of those other things. And then for our tags, the kind of things that we put in for tags would be maybe the food that was in those meals. So you could have, as a tag, you could have bacon, right? And bacon really should be part of most meals. if you eat meat. But it would be something like that. So you have the meals would be the categories, and the foods, which could be included in multiple categories. So each post should belong to one category, but a tag might be applied to multiple posts throughout categories because it might share some element, and that's usually the best way to do it. So we want to have a post in one category, but you might have 5 to 10 tags in a post, depending on how big your content is. You don't want to put them just to put them, but it's a good way for people to be able to kind of navigate through your site quickly into topics that they're interested in, which may span more than one categories. And that's how we prevent having to have a blog entry in 15 categories, is by creating really nice ones and then having our tags be the ones that are connecting things on a larger level. So, and now that we have our content in there, all we need is a featured image. And what a featured image is, it's the main image for a post, and how that's displayed on the front end, again, is dictated kind of by your theme. So they might have the big image at the top of the post kind of in a highlighted fashion, and they'll have that set as the featured image location, and this is where you put that in. You just click, it's just like uploading an image, click set featured image. You can upload a new one or just select the one from your media library. And now we have a completed post. So we have a couple options here. The first is to save it as a draft. So it's not perfect yet. You want to add to it later, or you're just putting these in there to get them in there and you're going to go back and fix them later. You can save it as a draft. You can click preview and that'll open it up in a new window. So you can kind of take a look at how it looks on the front end. See, this is my featured image. So in this theme, they put it here, and that's what they'll all look like on the main page. And the last one is publish. You could also use this publish setting to, you can have a post schedule in the future by putting in a date and time in this. But in general, we'll be using the publish button to publish our posts as soon as we're done writing them. And there we go. So our post is now live on the front end. So that is post. That's how you'll create blog posts, and it's also how you'll create other content in the future. If we do anything with custom post types, it'll be the same kind of setup and structure. There may be a couple custom fields or things, but we'll get into that later. So the next thing that we can talk about now is our really quickly, we'll go over post categories and tags. So you can create them through that interface in the post editor. You can also go in and manage them by clicking on the categories. You can add new ones, select the parent, edit existing ones, or you can do the same thing with your tags. Those are all kind of saved in the system, and you can manage them through here.